What is up? Welcome back, everybody, to Draft Podcast 3.0. I'm Mike Renner, joined by Steve Palazzolo. And Steve, it is Thursday, February 23rd, when we're recording this, which means we're less than a week away from me getting inappropriately drunk in Indianapolis at the Combine and you having to cut me off.
That has never happened at Indianapolis, other than that 1 year.
Oh, that 1 year, yeah.
Yes, other than that, it's a rare occurrence. Come on, Mike.
No, not this year. I made some New Year's resolutions that, I'll be better this year at the Combine, but we will be in Indianapolis, me and Steve, all week long there.
I'll be keeping a close eye on you.
We might have a draft show on Sirius Friday night. We'll say more about that later, but yeah, we're going to be in Indy, and we want to talk a little bit of a preview here about the Combine, about what we're going to see, what we're expecting. And I just wanted to first talk about, what does it all mean, Steve? What does the Combine mean to you?
This is where you hear the analysts say, it's all about the medical. That's why they did it. You know, here's what I think. You hear a lot of complaints about they're not football drills. You know, put a guy in his football stance. You know, a running back doesn't run out of a three-point stance when he runs in a game and all that stuff. I like the fact that it's putting everybody in a similar situation. It's one spot. Everybody runs the same drills unless they drop out of them. And then it's not necessarily supposed to duplicate football. I think that's where people complain. Well, this isn't football. This is, when do you ever run in a straight line, for 40 straight yards? I think it's just more information for teams to use. And I think that's what the value of the Combine is. Everybody's doing the same drills, and then it's up to the teams to make sense of what it means. Yeah,
and it is 100% dated in terms of the drills that they do. We know at this point that they're not perfect indicators. They're not amazing. That there's new things like speed tracking, player tracking ability where you can actually figure out how fast they're going in and out of cuts, in and out of routes, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that would be far more important.
Absolutely.
But the biggest importance of the Combine is the fact that they now have 30, 40 plus years of historical data that you can compare against in a database that it's the same every single year.
Data that you're
and
comparing.
Yes, and so you can see trends in the data. You can see trends in height numbers, height weight numbers, physical numbers, agility, that sort of thing. You'll see trends over time, and so there are, and we've seen people do good work on that sort of stuff to actually come up with, thresholds, cutoffs, where you're not going to go below a certain athleticism number just because you've seen in the past that doesn't work out.
Right. Yeah, I think where people have gotten into danger is just looking at, say, a 40 time, and all of a sudden, okay, that's the guy because of a 40 time. But there's certainly other drills, and it's the combination of drills, and it's all of those things rolled into one. And like I said, like you said, it's a like data that people can analyze. And I think that part of it is important. You don't need to duplicate what's on the football field. You have thousands of snaps to actually analyze what these guys did on a football field. This is one isolated part of the job interview, and I think it's extremely valuable.
Yeah, the 40 gets incredibly overrated in my mind. There are some positions it matters. I think cornerback it matters, wide receiver it matters, guys who are actually going to go 40 yards on a particular play at some point in time on a football field. But when you're talking about a pass rusher, when you're talking about a defensive lineman, when you're talking about a linebacker who's going to have to travel maybe 10 yards on a play to make a football play, I don't think it matters whatsoever. I mean, there are obviously outliers on both ends of the spectrum that it does matter, but there are far more important drills. I think the 3-cone gets slept on as the most important drill. I think for most positions, it is the most important drill at the NFL Combine.
Well, yeah, it's short area quickness. It's how quickly can you accelerate, and it's change of direction. That's all football type of stuff.
I was going to say, it most replicates an actual football play in that you're going different directions. You're,
right. I think the best players generally do a pretty good job at that. I think there are other interesting trends in the data, stuff that we saw a couple of years ago. Trey Waynes from Minnesota. He was one of the few guys that ran a faster 40 than he ran shuttle time. And that's just a rarity because, he was 4.40 or so in the shuttle. Most corners are in like the low fours.
Yes.
And he was over 4.4. And I think you actually saw that on tape. He was so good, straight line, could cover the deep ball, wasn't as good with, change of direction type of plays. So I think that's all stuff that you see. And I think those change of direction drills, the shuttle, the 3-cone are very important.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And especially, I think the one position that we've seen it somewhat correlate the most is defensive line. I think that has legitimately, from the numbers that you get at the Combine, you can legitimately project some sort of, player in the NFL. One of the biggest comparisons I keep going back to is the Jadeveon Clowney, Khalil Mack, when they were both coming out. Clowney had that eye-popping 40 time. You know, he ran a 4.53 40, ridiculous for how much he weighed, for how big he was. But his 3-cone was a 7.27, which 7's sort of the cutoff for real good for a pass rusher in the NFL. And then his shuttle was 4.43, around the Trey Waynes number. That's just not great lateral agility. And we look at Khalil Mack's 3-cone, 7.08 3-cone, fairly good, and then a 4.18 shuttle, which is ridiculous for how big he is. And he ran a 4.65 40. So you look at the 40 times and you think Clowney's this explosive, much better athlete, but then Mack's the guy who turns the corner on an offensive tackle and wins consistently in that way, whereas we've seen Clowney sort of not have that sort of consistency winning the edge. He's more been a bull rush guy, more been an inside move guy in the NFL, and I think you kind of could have seen that coming based on those numbers.
You saw it all in February. You can see it all at the Combine.
I see it all now, in retrospect.
Yes, it's easy to look back. I mean, I think the other numbers that are interesting, just that 10-yard split's always interesting. The get off for a defensive player or for a wide receiver or for a running back. And then the numbers that they don't share, but I think it's that finish, that 20 to 40 in the 40, I think is an interesting breakdown for receivers. That's like Mac Hollins from UNC, receiver that we really like that got injured. He just seems to have that second gear to run away from corners, and I think the best wide receivers that have that will show it in their 40.
And I think that matters both for wide receivers and for cornerbacks. That long speed, that sort of, you're already running full speed. Do you have that gear to take it, to not get beaten at the catch point, to not get that separation right at the end? Someone who I thought, that's what I liked about Will Fuller last year, was if you watched his 40 on the simulcam, they put him up against...
Football. There was no football there.
He didn't have to catch it at the end of the 40. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but if you watched him on the simulcam, about halfway through, he made up ground on pretty much all the receivers in that class. He was about the same through the first 20, and then halfway through, that's when he made up all his... And that's what it looked like.
That's what he did on tape.
You could see him separate late on tape. So
Chris Jones, another guy that really stood out last year at the Combine. Your guy.
Literally stood
out. Literally did stand out. What kind of numbers can Mike Renner put up? Do you have numbers?
So we've been debating doing an NFL Combine, but at my prime, if I just take every number at my prime, I probably could put up a 37-inch vertical, I want to say. Maybe like a 4.6 40.
You're a known exaggerator.
I legitimately
4.6?
Probably around a 4.6.
I could probably run a 4.6.
And then I did do 7 combine reps the other day, though. So 7 reps at 225.
7 reps at 225.
I'd be about Jared Aberdarius. That's my spirit animal.
I can do 10 reps with 90-pound dumbbells. Does that translate at all? Does that do anything for you?
You can probably hit 225.
Probably get a couple 225s. Yeah. I ran a 1.83 10.
You're a nose.
All electronic.
Okay.
183. What does that translate to? Do you have any?
It's like Travis Frederick. You're Travis Frederick.
That is not 5. That is good.
183.
I was comparable to. I was working out with NFL guys.
Well, you just jump. You're 6'10". You make it halfway there.
I was 183, and at about 270 pounds.
Okay, that's moving. You should have switched to. You could have been a left tackle, Steve.
Could have been a left tackle.
But yeah, so that's the breakdown. Just what we're looking for, position by position, basically. 40s are important for corners and wide receivers. Cones are important for guys on the line, important for linebackers, important for basically everyone cones. And then I like to see with running backs is the one position where I'm kind of a little different on what I want in terms of numbers. I like to see vertical jumps, broad jumps, 10 times because it's all about.
I like the 10.
I think that explosive numbers for running backs is very important. Just the ability to run through an arm tackle, the ability to cut on a dime. And get
I like watching them. I like watching the position drills for running backs. I'll never forget the best cut I think I've ever seen at the Combine was Dion Lewis a few years ago. The best one single cut
fell out of your seat
I've ever seen, and I'm a big one-play scouter. I love, the opposite of what we do here at PFF. We grade every play. I love to define a guy by one play if possible. Dion Lewis's cut when he came out was unbelievable, and he finally started showing it in the NFL.
I will
last
say.
Season.
One guy coming out who, going through the position drills, I was like, he just moved a little differently than everyone else, was Marcus Wilson, the wide receiver for the Bears. Whiffed on that one. He is not.
Whiffed on that?
Yeah, I mean,
well, the other guy
just had a catch that looked so natural.
Yeah.
But
the other guy that stood out for me
was one-play scouting, though. You can't.
The other guy that stood out for me was Joe Thomas. I thought he, just in pass protection drills, just looked so much better than everyone else.
You can see a lot in those O-line when they have to shuffle back and forth.
Right.
Some guys literally, I remember Andrus Pete lifting up his legs was like a chore.
Right,
right.
Well, we talked to one O-line coach a couple of years ago, and we were just running through the offensive tackle class, and the only thing he said about Pete was cankles.
Yeah.
So that pretty much summed it up.
He's all right though. He's getting better. He's been
pretty good.
He'll be a good guard. All right, so guys, who were we looking for, Steve? I wrote this article earlier this week about guys who are going to blow up the combine.
So you tell me, who'd you do list? Washington Post guy, by the way. Check it out, Mike Renner's article.
Check out the article, but I'll just give a breakdown here of who I went with. I went with number 1, Obi Melifonwu, the safety from Connecticut. Melifonwu is a guy who I legitimately think could make the switch from safety to linebacker hybrid. Him closing on underneath routes, from that kind of hang player at the safety when he was down in the box. So quick to close on sort of, the out routes,
and
the
he's
swings.
Huge.
And he's an absolute monster. Him walking across stage at the Senior Bowl weigh-ins was, I wrote in the article, I said he looks like a action figure that you'd make of an NFL player.
Like, he did he win the weigh-in for you?
Yeah, he won the weigh-in. He's the kind of guy you were at the beach with your girlfriend and you see him, you start walking the other way because it's just not going to end well for you.
Does that happen often too? You just,
I'm just walking in circles.
You run at the beach. Obi was very impressive at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And he's 6'4", 220. He's a safety. They put him out at corner a couple times. You can check out my Twitter feed at PFF_Steve. We have a rep against Syracuse wide receiver Amba Etetawo. Deep threat that Obi ran with him, did pretty well down the field. And then our other guy, Josh Liskowitz, just posted a great video of him closing, that closing speed that you said. So very good athlete at 6'4", 220.
Mm-hmm. And that was number 1 on my list. Number 2, I'm an idiot per usual. I put Jared Davis, having no clue that he's actually not going to work out the combine because he's injured. I asked all of our college analysts, and no one seemed to be under that impression. So, hey, that's on you guys, not on me. But I take the L on that one. But he looks ridiculously explosive. The most explosive linebacker in this class. I don't think it's really even close. Foster's freakishly, athletic himself, but
like Foster,
Jared Davis has this different sort of pop when he gets out of his stance and wants to go somewhere. He's getting there about as quick as any linebacker I've seen in this.
And we watched him next to Raekwon McMillan. We watched both of them back-to-back, Ohio State linebacker, and it was like night and day. McMillan's just that guy, just makes the plays in front of him, and but Davis has that burst.
Yeah.
I think he's got some versatility to maybe play a spy role, short coverage, and then just use that explosiveness around the line.
You want him blitzing for sure, yes. But he won't actually work out, so we'll take the L there. Number 3, David Njoku, the tight end, Miami. Runs like a wide receiver, moves like a wide receiver. He's just probably going to put up similar numbers to a wide receiver, which when you're a tight end, that ends up looking pretty good.
That's Vernon Davis.
245 pounds.
He's
not going to. Okay, don't say Vernon Davis because Vernon Davis in a class all of his own. That's like saying, oh, this guy's going to be Calvin Johnson. Like Vernon Davis put up ridiculous.
That was a special combine for Vernon. Yeah, and Njoku, I think he's kind of going for that number 2 tight end spot behind O.J. Howard, and when he does crush the combine, I think that's where the buzz, and you'll start seeing him going to New England, late first round in mock drafts and all that stuff, so I think that is a good one.
Number 4 had Jamal Adams, safety from LSU. I just think he's...
Safety/corner.
Yeah, we'll get to that later, but
okay.
I just think he's sort of in that Patrick Peterson realm of just freakishly perfect athlete where there's really not... he's probably just going to put up great numbers across the board.
Freakishly perfect athlete.
That was an odd way to describe it. I regret those word choice, but I just think he's going to, 40-inch vert, 4.4, good cone, everything.
It's a whole draft.
A lot of boxes, I'll say.
It's a whole draft of 6-foot guys at corner that move really well. Mm-hmm. And then you add guys like Obi to the mix at safety. Jamal Adams at safety moves extremely well, plays with power. That athleticism does show up on the football field. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing his times and seeing if he can back up your article.
And then number 5, John Ross, wide receiver, Washington. He's probably going to run the 4.3s.
That's a gimme. He'll run away from everybody.
Because it was like Will Fuller last year. You just knew. But
he caught it. He caught it.
You watch him on tape and you just see he's moving at a different speed than the corners he's playing against. So, I think those 5. You had any guy you think could have a good week? I'm putting you on the spot.
You did put me on the spot as far as a guy that's going to have a good week. I think for the size, a guy like maybe Marshawn Lattimore, I think he moves pretty well at corner, and I think he'll show well.
Is Myles Garrett working out? Because
I don't know.
He's probably gonna.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but he'll probably save it for pro day. That's what most of those guys do. Don't forget Ryan Ramczyk too.
Ooh,
Wisconsin offensive tackle. He's by all accounts in spring ball he did kind of blow up the Wisconsin combine or whatever they do. He's really good at it. Whatever it is that they're testing
he's
at
gonna be the next
Wisconsin.
Bruce Campbell.
Except he's good at football.
Except he's good.
Oh my God, Bruce.
So I had a list here of some guys we think might not have a good week. This isn't an article because we don't feel like bashing sometimes. I feel like bashing all the time, but they won't let me print that. So
that's your other. You need a separate podcast for you. Maybe Sam. You and Sam like to.
Oh yeah, we like to get.
You guys would have a good one.
But one guy I said to Steve at the Senior Bowl when we were watching, Michael Roberts, the tight end from Toledo. I just didn't think he had any sort of next gear. I think his 40 is going to be when I see a tight end run the 4.8s. That tight end has no value to me anymore.
No, I like him. I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to run all right.
So? I think he runs mid 4.8s. He didn't have any sort of.
That's Scooby territory. Scooby Wright.
He's
territory.
A big dude. It didn't seem like he had any sort of juice in him when I was watching. I
thought at Toledo he looked slow at times, but I thought at the Senior Bowl he looked better. Maybe maybe it depends. Sometimes it's the reps you focus on, but yeah. I like Roberts. We'll see what happens.
Another guy who maybe it's just because I've been down on him for a while. Don't think he's anything special at the position. That's Samaje Perine. I don't really see much in terms of, I think his like explosive drills won't be anything special in terms of broad, vert, 10-time. I just don't see it with him. I don't know. Tell me I'm crazy.
No, I don't think it's not terrible. It's not terribly crazy. I think deep running back class. I don't think Perine ever came across as special. I think he did have a lot of good blocking at Oklahoma for much of his career and just kind of standard got what was there, right? For Samaje?
I graded that Kansas game, and that's
the one I was thinking of. That was the record-setting game.
The record-setting game was a joke. It was like, oh, Kansas, the whole defense is on the wrong side of, got fooled on this play.
John Costco, Kansas is not good, man.
The single high safety was literally like running to the wrong side of where the running back was going. He was like going the wrong, which is the biggest kiss of death. You can't do that.
And Samaje ran for the most yards in NCAA.
It was ugly. But him, and then one guy who I think kind of is still going to go top of this draft, but I think Mike Williams, the wide receiver from Clemson, I just don't see anything in terms of top-tier athletic ability that's going to look great. He might have a good vert, might have do all right in the cones, but I think he runs in the 4.6s there.
There's nobody to make catches over at the combine. That's his game. Contested catches.
There's no body control drill. Right.
I don't think he separates all that well. Mm-hmm. I think that's the difference. Corey Davis separates really well, whereas Williams doesn't separate. He uses his body, more of a possession guy, and he wins down the field because he can win the contested catch. That's Alshon Jeffrey. So you might be hearing rumors of, Williams is dropping just like Alshon Jeffrey, just like Laquan Treadwell, except I think Williams has
don't
better.
Don't put that on him.
But Williams has better actual contested catch skills than Laquan Treadwell.
Okay. Yeah,
Treadwell's are overrated.
Agreed.
And he separates better than Treadwell, who I think really struggled in that area.
One last guy that I had written down here, Desmond King, cornerback from Iowa. People might be moving him to safety. I don't see the long speed there.
He just keeps dropping everywhere. And I've always classed him as a zone corner, and that's not a knock. I just think it's something he's good at. And I think that's why some people have said he's a safety. And I think it's because he doesn't stay with guys in man coverage that well, but he's got really good zone instinct. So I can see the safety talk, but I also think in the right scheme he plays corner, like with Pittsburgh or Miami, like a zone-heavy scheme that can take advantage of his skills.
And you think Jordan Lewis? You said that you don't think he's going to test well.
Well,
I disagreed, but
I think long speed-wise, you saw the Florida State game. Guys ran away from him, and we were just talking online. Some of the other guys that are watching him right now, they said, "Yeah, long speed's a little bit of a question. Maybe we're just overrating that one Florida State game, which was more of a busted coverage than him getting run away from. But you did get to see him in the open field. Wasn't pretty. So is he a 4.5 guy? 4.55?" And then he's 5'10". That's not going to play. That's not a good combination. If you're 5'10", you want to be at least under 4.5 for the NFL to take you seriously.
Agreed. So that's the combine. We'll be there next week. We'll do a podcast from there next week. We'll do a show.
Sirius XM. Pro Football Focus Draft Show. Pretty much locked in. I think it's going to be Friday night next week.
Look out for it. We'll tweet out about it. But all right, on to the segments now. Moving on from the combine. Favorite time of the show. As always, scouting term of the week, mental processing. What does mental processing mean to you, Steve? And I know...
Instinct?
And I know you're going to go there because they're interchangeable, I believe. But mental processing, it takes into like the coaching elements that you're applying what you're being taught to do. I don't like to use the term, to be honest, but it's play speed. It's how fast do you play, how to read and react, that sort of thing. Are you able to think on the fly? That's mental processing.
See, the thing about terms, it's okay. It's okay if a term doesn't perfectly describe what you're trying to describe. So if it's semantic, it's a little bit semantics here, because if I tell you instincts, you know what that means, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's how quickly a guy reacts on the field. It's how he reacts to everything. And then if I say mental processing, you probably take it essentially the same way.
Yes.
Even though if we define both, they're slightly different definitions. So I'm going to say instincts because
I like saying instincts too. Yeah, it feels more football to me.
Mental processing.
Mental processing's like a test.
I get why people are doing it, trying to show off your knowledge and know what's going on. I don't know. I'm
Team
okay
instincts.
if you say instincts.
And now we read through your guys' tweets over the week. Some of you guys listen to the show, employed the balance ratio. We'll read some of the good ones here. Vitor Camargo.
Well, remind everybody what we
do. Daniel Jeremiah. Ask the big names in the draft world. How good is that? Vitor Camargo said to Mike Mayock, how about his balance ratio for DJ Jones? I like DJ Jones' balance ratio, actually. He's not on the ground too much. He's got some little quickness to him, so you didn't get a response. It's okay. Keep plugging away.
Keep plugging. You'll get some balance ratio responses.
And then Frankie asked about Hassan Reddick's balance ratio to Mike Mayock as well. No response again. They'll come around, guys. Just wait.
I think what's going to happen, they're not necessarily going to respond directly. You'll just hear it in their lexicon next year. You'll hear it.
They'll like the term, and they'll pick it up on their own. So, yeah. This week, Steve, what do you got for us? What should we be asking Mike Mayock about this week?
It's my turn for a made-up term. And this isn't... It's made up, but I've used it before.
I was going to say, I feel like it's almost not made up at this point because you use it a lot.
I've actually used it, so I'm cheating a little bit. But I like tackle radius.
For defensive linemen.
For defensive linemen especially. So a guy that can make plays outside of his gap. Mm-hmm. So you've got like Big Snacks, Damon Harrison, now of the New York Giants. That's a guy who can win in the A gap, beat his block in the A gap, and then reach and grab a guy in the B gap and make the play. Because he's just got he's length, he gets up and down the line of scrimmage. Big, long tackle radius. DeForest Buckner last year had it as well. May have used it in his scouting report. So tackle radius, hashtag tackle radius. That's what we're using this week. Be sure to spread the word. Tell your friends and tell the experts and ask the experts about a guy's tackle radius. Because if he doesn't have a good one, I'm probably going to drop him around if he doesn't have a good tackle radius.
Maybe don't say tackle a guy in the B gap next time. That's maybe not.
Oh, is that what you were? Is that what you were chuckling about?
Maybe not the best way to describe tackle radius. But yeah, tweet at him.
Football term.
Yeah, tackling the B gap. All right. Next segment. Up next, risers and fallers, guys that we've seen lately that are rising and falling in my mind because that's what the draft's all about. It's your draft stock. Where is it going? Yeah, buying and selling. So I'm buying riser for me, Jamal Adams. I watched a good deal of him this week. I love his balance ratio. He plays so under control for a safety. He's never
you say it with such a straight face.
He's never getting off balance. He's never getting himself in bad situations where he can get beat on a double move. He's never committing himself into bad positions. So I love him. Josh Liskowitz thinks he can play corner. I see it. He only lined up there about 4 snaps last year in terms of out wide corner. He played a lot of slot corner there at LSU. I think he legitimately could make that switch. I'm not sure I'd feel confident enough if I'm a team to draft him top 5 and force him to play corner. But if you get him,
it's a rare move.
It worked for Jalen Ramsey. I think he legitimately could. He has those type of skills, so he's rising in my mind. I like him top 5 of the draft. I don't think he can go wrong. I think he's fairly much a sure thing at this point. Faller in my mind, another safety, Jabril Peppers. I don't think he's a linebacker. I just don't see that sort of football mentality. He doesn't want to take on blocks at all.
No, he's much better on blocks.
Usually the guys who are the safeties who can make that transition are guys who play with physicality, play through blocks already. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want, and I don't think you want him in the slot either because stuff like screens and that sort of thing, he's also not trying to play through blocks. He just wants to, he wants to make plays and kind of freelance. I like him at pure safety. I think is his best position. Actually, his best position is probably on the other side of the ball in offense. I just don't really see that sort of defensive instincts.
So you want
I think
him
he could play wide receiver.
You want it wide receiver, not even running back.
I think he could. I'm saying I don't love his feel for the defensive side of the ball. I'm not sure why Michigan ended up putting him on that side.
Well, because he played everything. He still played it well at Michigan. I know we're projecting him. We're talking about the NFL. He was still a good linebacker / safety / slot hybrid at the college level. I understand both players. I understand we are Adams, very impressive player. I'm not fully on board with the cornerback thing, but I think the cover 3 teams that like those long corners might be a little intrigued by him there. And with Peppers, I think that's the natural deal right now is everybody's watching more of him saying, wait, where's all this hype? And it's like a lot of his good defensive plays are just him being unblocked. He flies to the ball, but it's a lot of plays where he's unblocked and it looks pretty. And he also gets blown off the ball by blocks as well. So I can buy those. I'm going to say my riser this week, John Ross, wide receiver from Washington. Already kind of had him in the first round mix. I could see him going up in that top 15, especially after he runs in the 4.3s or whatever he runs in.
Yep.
And it's the Deshaun Jackson comparisons I think are valid because he's a guy that can win in the short game, shallow drag and take it to the house, get behind the defense with his speed, catches the ball a little bit better than Will Fuller did last year. I know we keep picking on Fuller, but similar type of deep speed but with better hands. Really good releases off the line. So I like a lot of what John Ross brings to the table. The guy I think's falling, and this kind of is the trajectory of his season, was Eddie Vanderdoes from UCLA, a guy I thought had first-round potential coming in. Started the season great. He was a great run stopper at defensive tackle coming in, and we saw that early in the season. Added some pass rush to his game, started winning. Really does win with his hands. Does a lot of good things, but he really tapered off as the season went. And whether that was because he was coming off injury and it was a conditioning factor, I don't know, but I think Vanderdoes just lost a little bit of luster during the process.
He legitimately at the Senior Bowl was the fattest guy there. It's not even a joke. He looked like the fattest guy. It was concerning because
I thought you weren't going to pick on guys here.
because it just looked like he was carrying about 25 pounds that he should not have been carrying even for a nose tackle in the NFL.
And he has some good reps and then some bad balance ratio reps.
He was on the ground a lot in the one-on-ones, but he won more than any other nose tackle there. He actually had some sort of burst off the line of scrimmage as opposed to Stevie, who was not at all. But
Stevie, he's a specialist.
But I haven't watched enough of
why'd I even start?
The USC nose tackle. But Vanderdoes... Yeah, I haven't seen enough to get fully on board, but I can see why there are things that I didn't like either in this game. So those are risers and fallers. Moving on to my hot take, which actually goes back to my riser and faller. I try to not fall victim to this hot take, but I legitimately believe the fact that if you have a cool name in the draft process, one, you'll be pimped up higher by people in the draft community, the experts, the so-called experts, just because you have a more recognizable, you're on someone's mind more often if you have a cool name like Taco Charlton, like Jabril Peppers. If you don't, someone like Jamal Adams, you kind of move down the board a little bit. If I'm a guy's agent and my guy has a pretty bland name like Chris Johnson, Steve Smith, some name that everyone else out
Ryan
there has,
Anderson,
get you a cool nickname, get you just something, change your name to Tease.
Tease Tabor, maybe. Yeah.
Do something to get your name out there more cool. I think it actually legitimately matters in the minds of people. And I think there's some psychological backing to that. I'm not going to...
This is a real take?
This is a real take. I think it actually happens.
Do you have any data to back up?
No. That's why, Steve, this is my hot take of the week.
Have you read psychological studies on this?
I have. Not, but...
This is an absurd take. Now, Tease Tabor apparently read the same thing, or he's on the same page. Saying. He's like, I'm going to be T. I'm no longer Jalen Tabor. I'm going to be Tease the rest of the year. So, are we immediately saying Mike Williams is going to drop? We've already dropped Ryan Anderson. We've already seen him.
Corey Davis too might not get some love.
Tim Williams, Corey Davis, those guys are in trouble.
Good luck with your draft stock, dude. Get
Ramczyk ends up in the top 10.
Talk to your agents.
Charles Harris. He needs to change his name.
Get you some branding. It's not a joke.
Forrest Lamp, number 1 overall.
Whole team name. I think it's a thing, but Steve, apparently.
Eddie Vanderdos. I just said he was dropping. Let me change that. He's got a cool name. John Ross, I said was rising. I did it backwards. I did it wrong.
Yeah, you screwed that one up. You can't get on board though?
So we're into week 3 here. You had
a lot of our listeners are nodding our heads right now.
You had a lukewarm take first week. Last week was pretty good. I liked last week's take. If you didn't hear it,
upside.
Go back, and we kicked off the show with the upside discussion. I think that was worthwhile discussion. This one I think is absurd.
Okay.
And I need you to back it up for me. I know it's a hot take and you're just throwing stuff at the wall.
I will look into it and get back to you guys on next week's show to see if it actually
back it up.
There's this study out there that
Forrest Lamp is happy. He's a listener, I'm sure.
All right, on to old scouting reports.
What do we have?
A guy that we've talked about a little bit on the show and could have come up in the combine talk earlier about why the 40 isn't everything, and it's Bud Dupree, because he had terrible 3-cone times, terrible shuttle times. Anything outside of a straight line he really was not good at. In our scouting report, we said on him, Dupree, if there ever was a player drafted because of potential immeasurables, it is Bud Dupree. So it really is, he just was a freak athlete, did not produce well at Kentucky, was going up against right tackles exclusively. And if you go up against right tackles exclusively, we expect you to pretty much dominate.
Yeah, and his production
not dominant.
Wasn't great still.
And if you're that freakish of an athlete, supposedly freakish of an athlete, and you can't beat up on unathletic college right tackles, that's a red flag. That's concerning, and that's why we had him in like the fourth? Something, it was not high.
I think maybe third or fourth. We had him low. The production just didn't match the hype, and now in the NFL to this point, I think pretty close. He's got 9. We have him with 9 sacks in 2 years, including all the playoffs. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, we've got a lot of cleanup sacks and not impressive ones. 9 sacks, only 6 QB hits, only 26 hurries on 575 rushes. I know that's just a lot of numbers thrown out there, but it's a very low rate of pressure. So not very good so far from Bud. Poor pass rush grade, poor run defense grade in his 2 years for us.
A guy who a lot of people thought had upside too, which
maybe year 3 is the year.
Yeah. All right, so
go back and listen.
We're gonna kind of cheat on this next one too, on one that we missed on, and it is Randy Gregory, same class. We were super high on him. Here's what we said of Gregory coming out: there is so much to like about Randy Gregory as a player from his college tape, but the biggest question mark is whether he can add weight, maintain that weight, and still be an explosive athlete. So that was actually not his biggest question mark. His biggest question mark was what's come to fruition, and that's the off-field issues. Drugs. He loves them. Some marijuana. Who doesn't?
Is that considered a drug anymore?
I think that's
only a few states.
But so
in the NFL, it is.
That's the thing that I kind of wanted to discuss. Why I'm bringing up the Randy Gregory. Yeah, we missed on him. He's going to have 3 years now with almost no production in the NFL. Which at that point, even if he comes good in year 4, it's not been worth the second round pick. Not really been worth where we had him as a top 10, top 15 type player. But at PFF, my biggest thing is we just can't know. If you're an outsider in the NFL, that's the toughest thing to know is, what is he doing off the field?
Right.
What are those issues actually?
You can only hear rumblings.
And you can hear it, but
you only hear rumblings about maybe 50 guys.
Yeah.
And there's 300, 400, 500 guys you need to evaluate. So it's a little skewed, a little biased if you just listen to the rumblings. And we just don't factor off-field into our evaluations for the most part. I think there are a few exceptions where we have. But for the most part, here's what he is as a player. We keep the off-field aside, and clearly that's burned Randy Gregory to this point.
Yes.
It has burned. So many puns.
Good one, yeah.
So many puns here.
You're on fire today, Steve.
Unintentional puns left and right here.
And up next, we have the moment everyone was waiting for this week. Our Director of Analytics, Nathan Yonke. Mind-blowing stat of the week. What do you have for us this week, Nathan?
Wisconsin left tackle Ryan Ramczyk did not allow a single pressure in 8 of his last 14 games this past season. And in the few games that he did allow pressure, he never allowed more than 2 in a single game.
There we have it. Awesome stuff as always, Nate. Thanks.
All right, moving on. Last segment here. Handicapping the draft. We're making Steve place bets every week. Week 1, Steve put $100 that Mitch Trubisky was going to be the first quarterback off the board. Draft Pod 2.0, he put 50 on Dalvin Cook being the first running back off the board. This week, we got a good one. If I do say so myself, this is a good one. And it's what day of the draft will the first kicker be selected? Day 3 is at minus 500. Day 2, plus 300. And day 1, we got plus 10,000. If you think a kicker's going, you can put a buck on that one. Yeah. You can go a buck if you think Mark Davis is going to go Seabass again.
Are the Bucks going to go back to the well?
If the Bucks learn from their mistake and draft a good kicker this year.
So the only kicker that could go that high is Mr. Zane Gonzalez. So
shout out to PFF Gordon.
This is a Gordon. Is a Gordon question.
Yeah.
Gordon would probably lay a little bit on the plus 10,000 day one. I think he would. He's an optimistic kicker lover. Yeah. But I'm going to go with I'm going to trust Gordon's evaluations. Okay? I don't necessarily agree with his take on kicker value. We had a heated conversation in PFF Towers yesterday at the Towers over kicker value. And Gordon was adamant, and some other guys were adamant about, you'd never take a kicker before day 3, or even just wait till undrafted free agency. I'm going to go with the plus. Is it plus 300 on day 2?
Plus 300 on day 2.
I'm going to go $100 on. To go plus 300 on day 2, trusting Gordon's evaluations that somebody takes him in rounds 2 or 3, more likely round 3 because you have the compensatory pick. Gordon said compensatory picks, that's when he's going to go. I trust our special teams expert, Gordon. I'm going to win a lot of money.
See, I thought day 3 was like a layup. I was a little scared. I thought I put the odds too low on that because, in my opinion, no one wants to be the Bucs of last year who drafted Aguayo.
I know.
And became the laughing stock of the NFL.
Copycat
Just
league.
Even from a PR perspective, you don't want, even if you're so in need of a kicker that like you really need a kicker, I still, from a PR perspective, I don't see how you can get away with going in the 3rd round.
Compensatory picks. Watch out. Patriots are going to do it.
We'll see. So that's it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm PFF_Mike. This is PFF_Steve. We'll be back with a show next week at the Combine. Hope you guys have a good one.